Welcome to Grow Your Wealth, the podcast where scaling a successful brand and your wellness go hand in hand. I'm Rena Goodwin, founder and CEO of Factor PR, a top beauty, health, and wellness PR studio, and I'm here to help you work smarter, not harder. Each week, we'll talk branding, marketing, and business growth alongside real practical insights from trailblazers who are building businesses without the burnout. If you're ready to grow your brand, protect your energy, and design a life you love, you are in the right place. Let's grow. Hello, and welcome back to Grow Your Wealth, friends. Today is Casual Friday for me. I know these podcast episodes drop on Wednesdays, and I wanted to take some time today to discuss a topic that we talk a lot about at Factor PR that I just thought it would be also helpful to pull back the curtain and share some advice around pitching podcasts in particular. I've had a lot of podcast pitching experience, of course. Not only is it something that I do with our clients, but I'm also a podcast host, obviously, and I get a lot of inquiries around here for guests that want to join the podcast. So I'm going to share some insights that you probably don't hear quite like this because of, quite honestly, my unique perspective around this, being a podcast pitching person, a podcast host, a public relations person. And if you've ever wondered or said to yourself, like, man, 2026, I'd really like to try to get on more podcasts. Maybe you've tried pitching and you feel like those pitches aren't going anywhere. Maybe you're interested in pitching, but have been a little bit hesitating on that. This episode is really for you because especially in this age of AI, I know we talk a lot about that around here. We're living in a time where AI is really kind of like taking over a lot of content creation, right? It can help write your captions. It can summarize your expertise. It can even draft these pitch emails in seconds. Content is everywhere too. Quite arguably, we're in a very oversaturated state of content. Information is even cheaper than ever, right? And sometimes expertise alone is not even that rare. But you know what I think is rare? You've heard me say this, is that deeper human connection and unique perspective. And this is why podcasts matter more than ever, because they're one of the few places where people go to also slow down. It's where nuance still exists. It's where stories unfold, and it's where trust actually gets built instead of skimmed. And I tell you this again from firsthand experience. So this is not my theory. This is not hype. I've also attracted multiple retainer client leads, 4 to be exact, from one single podcast appearance. I didn't pay for this podcast appearance. There were no ads involved, no funnels. This was just one aligned conversation that went deep and did the work for me long after the episode aired. So talk about good ROI, right? As I mentioned earlier, as you know, I also host a podcast. I pitch podcasts for a living, which means I also live on both sides of this equation. And I can tell you confidently that I myself admittedly ignore or decline about 80% of the pitches that land in my inbox. And this is not because people are not impressive or worthy of joining the podcast. It's not that they don't have credentials or expertise, but the pitch itself is lacking. It doesn't give me a lot to work with. And so many podcast hosts are running businesses. They're running households. Podcasting maybe isn't even their full-time gig. So just like we talk a lot about in the PR world, we want to make it as easy as possible for the podcast host or the booking producer to say yes. So today I'm going to talk about what actually works and how to ensure that your pitch not only gets read, but your episode gets scheduled. I have 5 tips for you today. First and foremost, research matters more than you think. If you pitch my show or somebody else's show and it's clear that you don't understand the format, the tone, or the types of conversations that we have, it's going to make it really hard to say yes to your pitch. And I don't mean that you've got to go into this deep dive stalking. You don't have to listen to every single episode, but I mean, take some basic cues. Do you know if the interview is going to be, airing on a certain day? Does the show even have interviews? A lot of podcasts are totally solo. So if you're pitching a solo podcast, it's wasting your time, right? Do you know who the audience actually is? Do you know whether the host leans towards shows that are more tactical, more philosophical, more personal, all of the above? A great pitch too doesn't feel copied and pasted. And speaking of AI, I know there's a lot of great AI tools out there that will even help you pitch en masse. I totally get that. But a podcast host, just like a journalist, just like anyone, they know when it's spray and pray. So a great pitch doesn't feel like spray and pray. It doesn't feel like it's copied and pasted. It feels considered. It feels genuine. It feels like, when you receive it, that I see what you're building here and I know how I can contribute to it. That alone will put you ahead of more people. Next, you still need a media kit. Okay. If you're pitching a person, you need a media kit. You don't need a 12-page PDF with a ton of ego stats or your full CV. No. It's just a clean, simple snapshot that answers the host's questions ahead of time. They want to know who you are. They want to know why my audience would care about hearing from someone like you. Can I trust that you'll show up prepared and articulate well? So think of this as credibility support. It's not the main event. You'll hear why here in just a moment, but you do want some kind of media kit. Again, this can be an attachment. It can be a place on your website that the host can go to really take that deep dive into who you are and why you matter. If you're part of our RealFluence community at Factor PR, you know that we have an amazing media kit template that we use even in our agency that helps get our clients press coverage as well as podcast coverage. This media kit template is ready to go for you, totally plug and play. If you're not a member of RealFluence, you can head to therealfluence.com and you can sign up. Okay, now my next mistake is actually the biggest one. Number 3, the biggest mistake that I see people make, which will cost them their podcast episode chance, is pitching themselves instead of the episode. I'm going to say that one more time. Do not pitch yourself. Pitch an episode topic. At Factor, we get way better results when we pitch an episode than a host. Let me give you an example here. I get an incredible expert, a doctor, someone along those lines that sends me a well-written pitch, but the pitch goes on and on. I'm a founder. I'm a doctor. I'm a coach. I'm an expert. Yada, yada, yada. It basically reads like a resume. But I'm not hiring. I'm looking for great guests and great conversations. I want to invite guests that leave my listeners with some kind of lesson or learning, right? But a podcast host, they're not booking a resume. They're programming an experience. So what they need to know is, what are you going to talk about? What's the conversation? What tension are we exploring? What will someone walk away after listening to this conversation thinking differently or more deeply about? So when you pitch an episode angle, something very specific, something timely, something relevant to that audience, you remove that friction for the podcast host, right? Because now they're thinking about, okay, I got a great episode for my programming, not where am I going to fit this expert in? Okay. So you're no longer asking the host to do the creative labor for you. You're saying, I have a compelling conversation your audience will want to press play on. That is infinitely more powerful than a resume. My next tip, please, this one matters more than people realize, and that's timing. Kind of relates back to my first point about research. If a host just released an episode on the exact topic that you're pitching or a very similar one, we've missed that window. It doesn't mean your idea is bad. It means that our idea should have been different, right? It was mistimed. Podcasts run on editorial calendars. So rhythm matters, flow matters, contrast matters. So a thoughtful pitch also shows awareness, not desperation. Okay. So make sure you do your research. And if they recently actually had a guest similar to you, so maybe similar street cred, pitch a different episode, right? Again, if you're pitching episode topics, just make sure you're pitching a different episode than ones that have been recently covered. Okay. Otherwise, your timing's not great. Give it a little bit of time and try again in the future. And last but not least, if and when you get booked, support the show and say that in your pitch. If you've got an audience of 2,000 engaged people, mention that in your pitch and I will be happy to promote the show as well. Podcasting is a lot of work. There is a ton of prep. Then there's the recording, the scheduling, the editing, and then we've got to promote the podcast. So when you share your episode, do it thoughtfully, do it enthusiastically, help support the podcast too. You'll not only extend the life of the conversation, but you'll build goodwill with the podcast host. You understand that this is a partnership, not just a platform for you to use and forget about, right? It's not a transaction. That's also how you get invited back to the podcast or get invited to other podcasts in the future too. And quite honestly, this is just good relationship building advice as well too. This is how relationships compound over time. So make sure that you are promoting the podcast after you get booked and mention in your pitch that you would be happy to also promote the podcast after the episode airs. Make sure that you are doing your research to understand the formatting and the audience of the podcast. Also the timing, right? Did they recently cover a topic or a perspective that you also want to cover? If so, you'll probably have to navigate that, either change your topic or pitch later on. And then of course, make sure you have a media kit. And finally, pitch an episode, not yourself. Those are my 5 fast and furious key tips. If you make these shifts, I can almost guarantee you will get yourself on the appropriate podcast. And if you're listening to this and thinking you're like, all right, I get the shift, but I'm not sure where to start with positioning myself or my ideas in this way, definitely check out my new authority toolkit. So this is your one-stop shop for positioning yourself. That can be your personal brand or your business with confidence. You can head to therealfluence.com/toolkit and grab your authority toolkit. I also have the link in the show notes before. Again, it's going to help you clarify your perspective, your angles, and the conversations that you and only you are really positioned to lead on podcasts as well as in the media. And if you want this done for you, of course, that's where I can help come in at Factor PR. It's what we do every single day. We don't chase visibility. We build authority that attracts visibility, because ultimately we know the goal isn't just to be on more podcasts, right? This is the show for working smarter, not harder. After all, the goal is to be on the right podcasts, having conversations that actually move the needle for the audience as well as for you. So this is what's been on my mind lately, because we said now that it's January, podcasts have woken up. We have at Factor PR booked our clients on about 15 podcasts this month. Whew, it's a lot of work. And so I wanted to make sure that you guys had access to some of these really incredible tips that have really moved the needle for our clients. And these are tips that you can implement when you grow your brand and build your business too. So whether you have an agency or you're doing it yourself, these tips will work for you. So I hope this was helpful. I am rooting for you. And if you're curious too, like, wait, I want to actually pitch myself to the Grow Your Wealth podcast. Like I said, I do read every single email. You can head over to growyourwealthpodcast.com. Pitch me your episode. All right. And I'll even get back to you if you've got a little bit of time. If you want some tips on your pitch too, just mention that you listened to this episode first. All right. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you so much for listening. I hope this episode deposited some useful advice and insights to help you grow your wealth. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future conversations. You can find more resources, episode details, and updates at growyourwealthpodcast.com. And let's keep the conversation going on Instagram. Follow me at Grow Your Wealth Podcast. I'd love to hear your thoughts, questions, or takeaway from today's show. Until next time, remember, burnout is optional. Take care, and I'll see you next week.